Okay, so in this phase of the software, we're going to evaluate the movement evaluation, evaluate it, to see if we like the way the teeth are moving, if they're moving too fast, too quickly, if they're interfering with one another or whatnot. So first, I want to take a look at the mandible because that was the easier to arch to align. And one of the first things I notice is that it shows me initial position and final position. What is that telling me? It's telling me that based on the 1 month movement protocol, it's only going to require one tray. That is a lot of movement in one tray, in my opinion. So I am going to go ahead and back it off. I'm going to go back an arrow, and I'm going to go ahead and dial it back to biweekly. Okay, no big deal. It's just going to cut those movements in half. So let's look now. And let's click on another tooth so our little pivot doesn't pop up. That seems a little more doable per tooth. I don't mind the big movements once teeth are moving, but for the very first tray to move that much, I think is a little bit aggressive. Not a little bit, it's a lot of it aggressive. And although it may seat after a day or two of really pressing it on, I think this is more predictable. So, and it may not take any longer in treatment time, it's just going to be easier on the actual patient. So the lower, I'm happy with that. Now let's look at the maxilla and let's evaluate the tooth movement up there. So, okay, and so right now we're set up as 24 plus 1, so 25 steps. See if we like this movement. Looks pretty good. You might be thinking, well, 25 steps for this arch, that seems like a lot. It's this lateral. This lateral, it's hard to tell, but the actual root is way back here. There's a lot of root torquing going on in this case to get it to ideal. Now you could accept it non-ideal and just rotate the tooth in our previous step and then sort of IPR it to flat. But if we want to go for ideal, we're going to have to torque that root, which is going to add a lot of time. In fact, if you look, let's see how long it takes before the last teeth are done. The last step of movement is for the number 7, this upper right lateral. Its final movement is step 10. Beyond that, every other tooth is in place. So those 3 teeth are fine after 10 phases, but the other one is what's taking our 15 steps. So that's, sometimes sometimes there's just one tooth that really lags behind. Now I want to show you what the start step means. Start step is, say we want to keep this tooth, number 8, this upper right central. If we want to have it lag behind, we could say, let's have this start on step 8. Okay? Click refresh steps. And now if we walk through, we'll see that tooth stays still until we get to tooth step 8. And now it does its alignment. Okay? So we can use this if we're finding teeth are interfering, we need to get teeth out of the way. That's what that's there for. Now, I wouldn't actually do that in reality for that tooth, so I'm going to put it back to where it should be at step 1. Now, in a case like this tooth, I do notice that when I'm watching this, it's going to collide with the canine before it's actually finished moving. I can see it intersecting with that, and then it will move back away from it. Well, that is a collision that's not going to really work out. It's always going to be shoving measly. It may actually track because the plastic tray, so long as it doesn't get into this embrasure, it may be fine. It can just kind of squish forward as it's working. But if you want to make sure and avoid that, there's a couple of ways to do that. You can round trip it, and what I mean by that is you can take the tooth and shove it out forward first and then have it come back. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the IPR. Notice that it's starting off with a little IPR value. That just means my line sort of overlapped a little bit. It also means that 0.13 millimeters is false positive IPR, meaning it's not actually going to be that much IPR there. But if I watch the movement, I want to see when does it exceed, or what's my final IPR? My final IPR value is 0.21. So up to maybe 0.25 I'm okay with, but beyond that, that means it's going to need excess IPR. And look how high it gets here, 0.77. That's not going to work. I'm not going to over IPR and then end up with that diastema. So to correct that, I'm going to come forward and I'm going to find out when it exceeds that 21. And then I'm going to look about 3 steps ahead of that. That's just kind of a go between number, and I'm going to move this out. I'm going to kind of tip the tooth a little ways so that now it's at 0.2. Click refresh steps, and now it's going to try to get to that 0.2 there. And so I'm going to go another 3 or 4 steps. I'm going to move it out of that over IPR situation where it exceeds that. Click refresh steps. And now it's avoiding it, and once again it comes into contact again. Go 3 or 4 steps into that excess contact, refresh steps, go from the beginning, and then once again it does it one more time, refresh steps, not exceeding, not exceeding. And right there it gets a little bit more, not a great deal. The plastic would probably accommodate that, but I'm just going to, just for the sake of trying to really show you in this tutorial, you know, what you might want to do, I'm going to try to get this back to that 0.2. That's fine right there. Click refresh steps, and let's see what happens now. The number never jumps to 0.27, but that's again, that's okay. It's easy for me to get finicky and spend too much time. It's kind of like the margination step, the segmentation step. You can spend a bunch of time trying to get it just right. There we go. Now, doing so added a few steps, okay? Because it's trying to avoid that, which means it has to torque more, which is fine. That's just a reality. We thought we needed 25 steps, but we actually need 28. That's okay. It just underestimated to begin with, and to get there truthfully, we actually need 28 steps. So, okay. So that's it for this step. Now we are to a point where we can choose to add buttons, add brackets, or no attachments. This design aligners, leave this unchecked. When we have the ability to print aligners, which is not currently, but when we do have it, the software is ready to go. We just don't have materials that are really going to work. So anyway, I would click on add buttons, and then I'm going to click on continue to add buttons, and we'll pick up the next video at that next phase.